Hi, everyone. So I normally, in all my short form talks, choose to do a rant. I know that shocks a lot of you, but this is really more of thoughts. So this week and last week, I've been working on a software acquisition project for an organization, technically for 3 years, but it's only because we start the project, then end the project, then start the project, then get new direction. So it has restarted. So it had me thinking of things. And because we've been talking about AI a lot today, I had to follow the law that every AI presentation must have a robot in it. So I've completed that. So that's why I want to talk about this topic. And the other reason is I really want to hear after, during one of the breaks or something, what your thoughts or things that I've missed in this concept of how my thinking about acquiring enterprise software or solutions has changed over my entire career. So I've been doing this for, I usually on my slides say 20 plus years, but it's actually 38 years. And the big difference is how I thought about these things. So when I think about enterprise software back during the Reagan years, when we chose software, we were buying a thing, a single thing, no matter what it was. So most of the software when we did acquiring things was something that came in a box. It had media. It was licensed. You put in a license key and that allowed you to run the software. There really wasn't centralized license management. There weren't things like concurrent or networking or user licenses as much. And the way we integrated data with these things was pretty much through export and import or save it and opening it or saving it and transforming it and opening it. If we needed to integrate data between software or applications, it was pretty much manual through the export and import process. It was a point-to-point integration, and then that gave painful changes when the software on one point changed. And also, this led to, at least in my experience, the advent of roles that were like system integrators, or, we didn't call them solutions architects or enterprise architects or something. They were people with specialized skills, and they were costly, and you didn't normally have that expertise in-house, so you hired them on a project basis. Um, and then, of course, I have to mention that one part of this evolution was in the previous thing, data belonged to that system. It was native to that system. And then someone finally, I think, Ted Codd came up with relational database systems so that applications could read into it. But I worked with applications that you couldn't point to a database because it just managed the files. So we still had that integration issue. But databases were created not just for integration thing, but to have the single version of the truth, which we now know is kind of impossible to do. But we were making our way towards having what I call data infrastructure versus application driven. The other thing was access controls to the data was normally inside the database. And you had application driven access control after the application contacted the database. So some other key features of most of the enterprise software I worked with 30 some years ago was we could only scale up, and you had to buy the hardware for the biggest workload and the most important uses. And also, in order to scale up again, it involved migration usually, not just provisioning a bigger servers, that we had to migrate that data. So you could update software with a wizard, but you couldn't update hardware with it. The other thing from a data point of view was that our backups were usually limited to whatever native backup feature that was in a solution. We couldn't, we didn't have a lot of third-party backup systems, and databases had them, storage had them. Everyone had their own backups, and they, in theory, should have been done in sync with each other. But this is what we lived with. The other thing is that we had admins that were expert in that thing, that application, that solution. The best we could do a lot of times for compliance was to ask the vendor if they were adhered to any industry standards for compliance, security, privacy, or anything. And we started to get a little bit more advanced licensing, like user-based, concurrent-based, network-based licensing, those things. So we started seeing some progress there. But I realized as I'm working on acquisition projects over the last couple of years that my definition has changed. I still want all those things, but now it's more important to me that in addition to looking at the design traits of the actual solution, I'm asking many more questions and caring about how does this solution fit within our current enterprise stuff? And so, how am I going to integrate it? How am I going to use my admin, my security tools, my privacy tools with it? And then the other is I've learned from talking to vendors who are presenting their products that a lot of time they do not want to talk about how it integrates with our tools, our dev cycles, our repositories, our security models. If you ask them, they'll say, "Oh yeah, you can use Active Directory, I think," or something like that. This is at the pitch level, not the implementation level. Um, and I'm learning more and more that if we don't ask these questions when we're acquiring software about its ability to fit within our existing automated continuous deployment environments, it's going to cost us a lot more to use that solution than it is the value it might bring to us. So, my opinions on whatever internal design decisions the vendor made, like what database they use, whether it's SQL or NoSQL or SQL Server or in a cloud database, I don't care about it as much because a lot of those things are more mature than they were 38 years ago. And I put higher weight now when I'm evaluating software on all these outside the solution features than I ever did before. So while I was thinking about that, and I've been working on a blog post about this for a while, in another forum, I came across this quote where someone was complaining about why this software couldn't uh, couldn't integrate with GitHub, couldn't integrate with their run books and their management stuff. And people were arguing, why do you care? Why do you care? And he said, if we cannot source control all the artifacts and cannot automate the deployments, the platform is enterprise ready. And this was yesterday. So this is why it made. So I immediately wrote to him, I want to use your quote. Do you want to be attributed? No, he doesn't. But I said, this is perfect timing for what I've been thinking about this week and the last 3 months on this acquisition project. And this is just two things he's mentioned. I think there are dozens of things that we would put in that list. So I started thinking about my list. I want to emphasize when I'm acquiring a solution or talking to a vendor the importance of how they're going to fit into my enterprise architectural framework. And that's not just an IT thing to us data people, that includes our culture, our processes, how we think about governance, how we think about decentralized governance, how we think about data quality, how we meet our business needs. I want scalability and reliability with a much higher rate than weight on evaluations that I did 10 years ago. I also want to evaluate their claims about this enterprise readiness. So one of the reasons I'm on this new acquisition project is because the previous solution, which was hastily purchased without the input of architecture or data people, was that all their enterprise ready stuff doesn't exist. So in this one product we use, there's only 2 levels of security granularity: public user on the internet and global admin. That's it. So anyone we want to help manage the data in it or anything has to be able to change anything and everything about the product. And that scares me as someone who dabbles in security and reliability and quality. And so all of these things, and I'm getting a lot of feedback that my questions I'm asking the vendors aren't about the essential features of the product. I'm like, no, you guys ask those questions. You've got those things in your spreadsheet. I'm taking an architect's point of view of seeing what it's going to cost us to implement it, not what it's going to cost us to license it. So some modern questions that I ask all the time. Does it work with our current database management tools if it has a database? Does it work with our identity system? Does it work with our governance system? How do I monitor and alert on both logs and metrics that your application produces for us to analyze so that I can put Custo on it and start asking it questions? And they're like, well, we have logs. That's their answer to that. And I want to know about their security practices. Like the project, the solution I'm working on to replace does not support MFA, and it severely limits how long or complex a password can be. That bothers me because it's a public internet software as a solution. And to my friend on the forum, how can I manage the components of it? Does it have JSON files? Is it all buried into some just flat file hanging out on a drive along with the installation software? And if it can do data classification, and that's one of the things I've noticed about a lot of field days recently, is that a lot of vendors now are adding automated or AI data classification in it, but you can't get to that classification outside their data. And meanwhile, I've got a bunch of other data classification systems, and I want to share the classifications and keep them in sync. And if it has built-in analytical tools with data visualizations and graphs and those things, can I use my own analytical tools to do those things? So some implication of how I've changed my thinking about enterprise software is that we need to keep thinking about how we're going to manage and deploy and continue to keep this solution working for the business. And that's going to not work if the software can't do that. And the reason I want it is that I want to lower the costs and risks for the organization with this new solution. And you might notice the other thing, my design thing is I've stopped saying we're acquiring software, is that we are a client. And by solution, I mean software, parts, services, integrations, and everything with it. So I want to keep adding to this list. So I'm looking for things about how you think about enterprise software as well. And the way you do that is I'm data check almost everywhere. And I mostly write and blog on LinkedIn. So there's my LinkedIn profile. And I thank you for listening to, I think it was a half a rant maybe about how we acquire software. Thank you.